What's the smartest comment you've heard a child make? It was just another ordinary Wednesday in early spring, the kind where the sun peeked through the clouds with half-hearted effort and the air carried that not-quite-warm chill. I was teaching my third-grade class in a small public school tucked away in a sleepy suburb. 22 eight-year-olds sat scattered across the room, some wiggling in their chairs, others doodling. One kid trying very hard to balance a pencil on his nose. We were nearing the end of our unit on community and kindness, something simple but essential. I had asked them to think about what made a community strong. Some answers were expected: being nice, helping neighbors, picking up trash. Then I asked, what do you think the world needs more of? Hands shot up like rockets: love, peace, chocolate, less homework, more puppies, fewer bullies. One answer sparked a giggle chain, and another brought a full-on story about how aliens might fix everything if we just invited them over for dinner. But then Maya raised her hand. Maya was usually quiet. A soft-spoken girl with dark curls that framed her round cheeks and eyes that always looked like they were observing everything from a few steps back. She wasn't the kind to raise her hand unless she had something meaningful to say. And that day she did. She stood slowly, holding the floor like she'd just been handed a microphone before a live audience. I think the world needs more people who listen to understand, she said, not just to answer. The room fell silent. Even Josh, who had been poking holes in his eraser, looked up. I blinked. Can you say that again? She repeated herself. People need to listen to understand, not just to answer. That's what I think the world needs more of. I was stunned. I didn't have a smart reply. I didn't even have a follow-up question. What Maya said in that moment did something to me. It planted a thought in my mind that stayed long after the bell rang and backpacks zipped. That night I told my husband about it over dinner. He paused mid-bite, fork hovering in the air. She's 8? Yep. He set the fork down. That's actually kind of brilliant. And it was. It wasn't just clever, it was wise. And over the weeks that followed, I kept thinking about it, in meetings where people talked over one another, in conversations where I found myself forming a reply before someone had even finished speaking, in arguments where winning seemed more important than understanding. It echoed back to me like a quiet voice behind the noise. Listen to understand, not just to answer. A few days later, something happened that brought Maya's words back with even more weight. One of the boys in my class, Ethan, had been having a tough week. His dad had just moved out of the house, and though he hadn't said much, his behavior said it all. Short fuse. Trouble concentrating. Constantly seeking attention. That Friday, Ethan got into an argument with another student over who got to use the blue crayon first, an argument that escalated into yelling, crying, and nearly a fight. I separated them and asked Ethan to sit outside the classroom so we could talk privately. He sat on the bench in the hallway, arms crossed, lips tight. I sat beside him, quiet for a while. I know it's not really about the crayon, I finally said. He didn't look at me, but he nodded. Everything's just loud, loud, loud. In my head, everything's loud all the time. His words hit me like a rock. Do people listen when you try to tell them that? I asked. He shrugged. They listen, but I don't think they hear me. And there it was again. Not just listening, hearing. I asked Ethan what he needed, not what I thought he needed. Not what the behavior chart said, what he needed. And he told me, space. Break. Someone to check in on him without trying to fix him. The next week, I adjusted our classroom routine. We added something called quiet corners, not just for reading, but for breathing. I asked questions differently. I made eye contact longer. I waited before responding. I tried every single day to listen to understand. And you know what happened? The class changed. Kids started talking to each other with more patience. Conflicts shrank before they exploded. Maya's phrase caught on. One day I heard Liam whisper to Ava during group work, "Hey, try to listen to understand, remember?" It was like Maya had lit a candle and passed it on, one heart at a time. I wrote a note home to her parents about what she'd said and the impact it had. Her mother replied with tears in her message. Maya says things sometimes that stop us in our tracks. She told me once that grown-ups don't always like being wrong because it makes their pride feel bruised. I had to sit down after that. I wasn't surprised. As a teacher, you get used to the idea that your students will remember you. But what you don't expect is how deeply they will shape you. How their innocence isn't just cute, it's raw, uncensored truth that comes from a mind not yet dulled by ego or fear of being wrong. Years passed, but I never forgot Maya. I kept a little notebook of quotes from my students, and her comment remained at the top. Eventually, I shared her words in a speech at a teacher's conference. I teach children to read and write, I said, but sometimes they teach me how to be human. There was a standing ovation that day, not for me, but for the idea that even our youngest voices carry wisdom if we choose to hear them. One of the organizers came up afterward. She'd been teaching for over 30 years. "That's one of the smartest things I've ever heard a child say," she whispered. "I hope she knows how powerful her voice is." I smiled. She will. She already does. Fast forward to this past fall. I was setting up my classroom when I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Miss Clark, you may not remember this, but when I was 8, I said something in your class that stuck with you. You told me once that it helped you see the world differently. I just wanted you to know. You helped me see myself differently too. Love, Maya." There were tears in my eyes before I reached the end. That day, as I looked at my new class full of wide-eyed third graders, I remembered what she taught me. I listened more. I paused. Longer, I spoke less. And I understood more than I ever had. So, if anyone ever asks me, "What's the smartest comment you've heard a child make?" I won't even hesitate. People need to listen to understand, not just to answer. Because sometimes the wisest truths don't come from scholars, or books, or podcasts. They come from the soft voice of a child who sees the world not as it is, but as it could be. And that's something worth listening to.